is in light of Isaiah 53, which speaks of Jesus and him resting on the cross in the hope of God, and through that, him crushing the serpent's head, right? He crushed the serpent's head. That's what's going on there. So, but before Messiah came, they were like a wife who was forsaken in her youth when she was refused. That's how Isaiah describes them. Sing now, okay? For you were barren and you won't be barren anymore. But before you were barren, for you were like a wife who was forsaken in her youth when she was refused. Okay? And so they were barren before because they were like a wife forsaken in her youth. Okay, so that becomes the crux of the matter. What does it mean to be like a wife forsaken in her youth that was refused? Okay, so sing and rejoice now, for you were barren. Okay? And when you were barren, you were like a wife that was forsaken in her youth and was refused by God. Okay? That's what Isaiah comes and says. So you sing then, and this is what you were doing. This is what was going on before you were singing. So what does it mean for a wife to be forsaken in her youth? A wife forsaken in her youth is talking about a wife who is not bearing the fruit of her husband. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about a wife that is barren from the fruit of her husband. And the reason why she's not bearing the fruit of her husband, the reason why she is barren, isn't because the husband doesn't want to be with her. It isn't because the husband doesn't want to be intimate with her. It isn't because the husband isn't there present with her. The reason why she's barren, the reason why she's not bearing the husband's fruit, is because she's not being intimate with the husband. She's being intimate with something else. Okay? So Israel was like a wife forsaken in her youth. And what that means is she wasn't bearing the fruit of God's life. God's fruit was not being born in her. God's fruit was not manifesting in her. The reason why God's fruit wasn't manifesting in her is because she wasn't intimate with God. Okay? So God refused her in that place. Or God, how do I want to say it? I got to choose my words carefully here. Let me get back to what I'm saying here. So a wife forsaken in her youth just means that they were barren. It means they were not bearing God's fruit. It means God's fruit was not being born in them. It means it wasn't manifesting in them. It's not talking about God no longer being present with them. It's not that his desire was no longer towards them. It's not that he didn't want to be with them. It's not that he was withholding intimacy from them. It's that they were not being intimate with God. God's fruit could not be seen in them, and the reason it couldn't be seen in them is because they were not being intimate with God. They were being intimate with the flesh. It's not as if God didn't want to be intimate with them, or as if God was withholding intimacy. It's that they weren't being intimate with them. You guys following that? What you almost want to say it is this way. You almost want to say it this way. God's fruit had forsaken them. The reason his fruit had forsaken them is because they weren't being intimate with him. Okay, but they were being intimate with the flesh. Okay, so